Hi guys, it's your personal economist Ryan Barnes. I just wanted to come in and talk to you guys today a little bit about inflation. And the reason why I wanted to talk about inflation today was because inflation came in really high uh, compared to the last 10 years or so. It came in around 5% for the year ending in June of 2021, which is really, really high. So, what exactly is inflation, you might be wondering? Well, if you've gone to the grocery store or you've gone to fill up your gas tank, you've probably noticed the prices are a little bit higher than they've been in the recent past. That is essentially what inflation is. When we talk about inflation, what we're really talking about is we're talking about those prices that you pay. We're typically talking about the CPI. Uh, and you might be wondering, what exactly is the CPI? The CPI is really just a bundle of goods, and we track how much that bundle of goods costs over time. It has everything in there from the groceries that you buy to rent on housing to uh, all sorts of different things, interest payments, and basically what the government does is it comes along and it says this is what a normal household will buy. They'll buy so much. They'll buy so many PlayStations. Uh, They'll buy so many pounds of potatoes. They're going to buy so much gas for their cars. They're going to buy so much of each and every sort of thing. And then they track how much those prices change over time, and they turn that into a percentage from the previous period, whether that's a month or a year or whatever period you're comparing it to. And that percentage is what gets reported as the rate of inflation. So, what that means is that this last year, the year ending June of 2021, the rate of inflation was 5%, which means you're paying 5% more for the typical bundle of goods that Americans buy than you were last year. So you might be wondering, well, what causes inflation? What causes inflation is kind of interesting. It's multiple things. One of the things that causes inflation is these macro effects. And that's the thing that really sort of you hear about all the time. You hear about the way that we're printing money and how that contributes to inflation. But that's not the only way that you can cause inflation to increase. One of the ways that you can cause inflation to increase as well is through some micro effects. And what that really is a supply and demand issue, right? Uh, if the supply of something stays the same but the demand explodes, then you're going to see higher prices for that thing. That's just simple microeconomic thought, right? Is prices go up when you start running out of something. Um, and so that can cause inflation as well. But typically, what most people think of is that the money printing thing is permanent inflation. The micro thing is a temporary thing, right? Eventually, the market will adjust and the prices will come back down. But that's not necessarily always true because there are things that affect the cost and supply of those things. And if those costs go up, you're going to supply less. So micro effects can be permanent as well. Now, you might be wondering, well, gee, 5% inflation, that's a lot of inflation, especially when I've been used to 1%, 2% for the last 10 years. Um, what is it that I can do what is it that I can do to prevent inflation from killing me? Well, there are two things that we can do as a society to press the pause button on inflation to sort of pull back on inflation. One is we can just stop printing money. That is the macroeconomic way of stopping inflation. And I don't think that's what's been causing our low inflation, is that we haven't been printing enough money. We've been really good about not printing enough money over the last 10 years, because over the last 10 years, we've actually printed a lot of money. More so last year than in any other time, but we still print out a lot of dollar bills, whether those are digital dollars or whatever, over the last 10 years. And that really hasn't caused much inflation. And the reason why that is I really don't know. I'm not a macro economist, but I am a microeconomist, and I think the microeconomic explanation for why we haven't been seeing inflation over the last 10 years, despite all of this, money printing that we've been doing since 2008, is really because of the microeconomic story. And the microeconomic story is simply this: if you get better at producing stuff, you can produce more stuff at the same cost. You're going to supply more, and that's going to drive prices down. That is, in a nutshell, what I think has been causing a low inflation rate in the United States for the last 10 years, is that we're just getting better at producing stuff. Now, that some of that is artificial, in the sense that we do that by accessing technology through trade, where we're substituting our own costs for some other country's costs, which is fine. That's just something that you do as a society. But the thing that I think is also going on is that Americans, we're doing things that are higher value service economy type things, and that's causing that's high margin type products, and we're just better at doing those sorts of things. And so that's where the low inflation has come from over the last 10 years. But then we had the pandemic, and because we had the pandemic, what happened is we've just gotten hammered, and now we're not as good at accessing things through trade because of the pandemic and people getting sick and all that sort of stuff, and we haven't been able to ship things as efficiently as we were before the pandemic. We haven't been producing things as efficiently because we have to spread people out so they don't get sick and all that sort of stuff. So that's really what I think has been causing a lot of the stuff that's happening, is we're just not as good at producing things as we were before the pandemic happened. And that's what's driving this high inflation. So those are the two things that we can do as a society, but what can we do for you, right? There are a couple of things that you can do. One is to just buy the things that are going up in value and hold on to them. So you could buy, gold, plywood, you could buy real estate, and just hold on to those things until, the inflation happens, and then you can sell them, and bada bing, bada boom. You've avoided your dollar bills from becoming worth less, right? You get more dollar bills because all of the inflation happened, and so the price of all of the stuff that you had went up. The other thing that you can do is you can buy interest in companies that have pricing power, that are going to be able to pass on extra costs to their consumers. And by being an owner of that company, you are indirectly passing those costs on to your customers, right? So you could do something like buy Coca-Cola or buy some other company that has a really strong brand. I say Coca-Cola not because I'm recommending Coca-Cola. I'm just saying Coca-Cola because everybody knows Coca-Cola. They have an amazing brand. The other last thing that you can do is you can short the dollar bill, and that's actually easier to do than you would think. Most Americans are actually shorting the dollar bill right now. Um, and the way that we short the dollar bill, the easiest way to short the dollar bill is to go into debt. By going into debt, you are essentially shorting the dollar bill, because what you're saying is, I'll spend the money today, and tomorrow, when the dollar is less expensive, I will repay the loan and with less expensive dollars. So you're essentially shorting the dollar at that point. And the average American is short by something around $150,000. Which is primarily made up of the mortgage. 68% of that figure is mortgage debt. And that's average across all ages, all races, everything, right? That's just 68% of $150,000 is just the average amount of mortgage debt that Americans have across the board. 3% of that is in a home equity line of credit, 9% in your car, 6% on a credit card, 11% in student loans, and the rest is made up of various other types of loans, whether that's a boat loan, a personal loan, blah, 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 right? By doing that, you can actually come out ahead because you're going to inflate away your debt. Matter of fact, millennials such as myself might actually do well with their student loans if we are able to command the prices for our labor following inflation. And so inflation might actually be a good thing for a lot of millennials. But that being said, that's not a great way to do that. I think that a better way to go about this would be to short dollar bills and buy assets. So you could do something like buy some real estate, buy a house. And if you buy a house, that's great. Whatever, you put a mortgage on it and you've shorted the dollar, and you've got this asset that's also going to appreciate in value, and so you're sitting in a better spot, right? You're taking advantage of inflation in two ways. You've got an increasing price of a hard asset of real estate, and you've shorted the dollar, which is becoming less and less valuable, which you can then get to pay back with cheaper dollars. So, and especially with the low interest rates that we have right now, that's not a bad choice. So I think that that you could also do very well by shorting the dollar, taking out a margin loan, and buying shares in some of these great branded companies that have pricing power. That could actually work out really well in your favor as well. So those are just a couple of ideas on things that you can do to work with inflation. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.